It's a new day in Eugene with a new head coach at the helm. We discuss who Dan Lanning is and his impact when it comes to the future of the Ducks, and then who Oregon didn't hire on today's episode of Locked On Pac-12 podcast.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Pac-12 podcast. And making this your first listen of the day, you have made the right decision. Thank you all for tuning in. And today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. I'm your host, Cindy Robinson, former Pac-12 student athlete. And joining me today is a brand new host to the Locked On, network family. We'll say that.
That works.
Spencer McLaughlin. He will be hosting Locked On Ducks. That's the official name. Locked On Ducks, a new show to the team, a new Pac-12 show, which is more than amazing. We need all the Pac-12 coverage that we can get, especially when it comes to those Oregon Ducks. So Spencer, welcome to the team. How has it been so far? I know you're still getting fresh into the mix and everything, but how's it going?
Well, thanks for having me, Cindy. It's great to be on the show. And, I'm only a few episodes in. And right now I'm finding myself just churning out ideas in my head all the time. And it's great to be able to have a place to get out there and connect with Oregon fans and talk all thing Oregon sports, which right now is all football all the time.
I love that. Okay, so do you have any personal connection to Oregon?
So I grew up in Oregon, and I've been a Duck fan my entire life. My dad went to the University of Oregon. My mom went to the University of Washington. We don't talk about it. Yeah, it's a little awkward. There have been a lot of awkward Saturdays in my household where we leave mom alone in whatever corner of the house she chose to put herself in for the day. But yeah, so I've been going to Autzen games since I was probably 5 or 6 is when I went to my first game, and we tried to get down at least to one a year. And I did not attend the University of Oregon, but anyone who knows me will tell you that I've been a Duck fan through and through my entire life. And I know a lot of people in and around the university. And so just being able to host a show and, have a connection to the fans and talking about Oregon athletics, it's an awesome thrill. And I love being a part of it.
Well, no worries there. Mom, I can't really vouch for you because I went to Washington State.
No.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Oregon either, but UW, that's a whole different.
Yeah, that's you don't have to like Oregon. I expect that, but you guys finally got the Huskies this year at long at long last. There were a lot of years where it was like, oh, this is the year. And then as my aunt, who's a Cougar, says, well, they couged it again.
Oh, no, yeah. It's been rough ones for sure, but this was our year. So definitely glad to have you aboard. Glad to have you at the perfect time, actually, because there's a lot to talk about with Oregon football, starting with their new head coach, Dan Lanning. I really just want to dive in first of who he is. I think a lot of people may not be aware he's not coming from our conference. So for those that aren't, deep into college football and just don't know much about him, can you give us a rundown of who he is and where he comes from?
Yeah, so he's a really young guy. He's 35 years old, and before he was now the 35th head coach in Oregon football history, which I don't know if you're a superstitious fan out there, but I was taught to jump over the chalk lines in Little League, so that's just in my head. That to me is a good omen and a good start in and of itself, and he's had a good first few days, which we'll get into later. But he was the defensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs for 3 seasons, and before that, he was their linebackers coach. Before that, he was at Memphis. Before that, he was a graduate assistant at Alabama under Nick Saban, and he's also had stops briefly just for a season at Arizona State, GA, Sam Houston State, which are the reigning FCS NCAA football champions, though they got smacked pretty hard by Montana State the other day. I was watching. It was never close, but they've been winning a lot of games. So he's been a journeyman for a guy who is only 35. He hasn't been just at one school and stayed there. He's been around. And one thing he noted in his press conference is that, he always wanted to be a head coach, aside from, of course, as he mentioned, the third grade basketball team he coached in high school, who he said were a damn good team. And he brought that up in response to someone asking about his not having been a head coach before. And
Right.
that was what he said, is that, well, I coached a third grade team and when I was in high school. But so he's been around, and he said that, he's just been writing names down and getting ready for this day when he finally got an opportunity at a premier institution, as he described the University of Oregon. Just coaches that he's worked with all the years, like, man, I might like that guy as my offensive coordinator. Man, I might like that guy to be on my staff. He's been wanting this, and he's been training for it for a while. And Georgia fans, I talked with the host of the Locked On Georgia podcast, Clint, or one of the hosts, I should say, and he said that they knew this day was coming. They felt it was inevitable because Mel Tucker was the defensive coordinator of Georgia. Then he went to Colorado. The Buffaloes decided they didn't want to pay Mel Tucker the money to keep him as their head coach, which is going great for Colorado. I have no idea what they were thinking. But then Mel Tucker goes to Michigan State, and he wins 10 games this year and gets the big time contract. But Dan Lanning was Mel Tucker's replacement, and as soon as he took over, Georgia fans knew, oh, this guy's going to leave one day. He's smart, he's energetic, he's passionate. The guy just loves football, and he exuberates that every time that he talks about the game. He said in the press conference that, his heart rate goes up just saying the word football. And I mean, that's the sort of guy that Oregon is getting. High energy, great recruiter, and a great coach and developer of talent as well. That's sort of the background on him. And there's a lot of reasons, those among them, why I think Oregon fans have a lot of reasons to feel excited about the hire. And the Georgia defense a season ago, just to put the icing on the cake of everything that I just, kind of built there, is they allowed 9.5 points a game last season, or this year, I should say, and 254 yards a game. So I would say that, like, as a defensive coordinator, he's got a resume, and the word on the street is this guy is ready to be a head coach, and he's getting his first crack at it with the Ducks.
Okay. Well, that was a lot. So I appreciate you coming with the facts and ready to talk.
Always prepared.
Coming up next, we will dive deeper into the possible impact that Dan Lanning will have on these Oregon Ducks and bringing whatever he's bringing to the Pac-12 conference. But for those of you that are college football fanatics, PrizePicks is one of those things we've been talking about for a minute now. And if you still haven't signed up, what are you waiting for? In addition to the college football action, PrizePicks makes college basketball more exciting. It's daily fantasy made easy. PrizePicks is a leader in college sports daily fantasy, and they offer more college football and basketball props than anyone in the world. They also offer all the star players of the Power Five, as well as mid-major players that you might not have ever even heard of. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of. In basketball, you can play points, rebounds, assists, threes made, and so much more. All of the users that deposit and use the promo code will receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Just be sure to use promo code Locked On. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over/under on their projections, and then you can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers. PrizePicks allows mixed sports entries, so you can take the over on Embiid, combine it with the under on Rodgers in the same entry. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code Locked On, or go to your App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Thanks again for making Locked On Pac-12 your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the Ultimate College Football Playoff Preview 2021. Local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview begins this Friday. Okay, Spencer. So we're talking Dan Lanning, new head coach at Oregon. And one of the main things I really wanted to dive into was his possible impact when it comes to, coaching this team that has been, I'll say, one of the leaders of the Pac-12 for quite some time. Even when there are struggles, it's still clear that they're one of the top teams in the conference. And so we've actually seen a lot of new head coaches coming into this conference this season in some pivotal ways. UW got a new head coach, USC got a new head coach, and now Oregon getting a new one. And I think the main conversation around all of those coaches were, how are they going to affect the conference? Is it going to be a positive way? And what shifts are we going to see? So when it comes to Dan Lanning, what do you think this hire does for Oregon, and then what do you think it does for the conference?
Well, I think it keeps the positive energy flowing at the University of Oregon at a time where, it might have felt a little uneven for Duck fans
Mhm.
when Mario Cristobal left, and you're just left in that space of, I don't know what's going to happen next. It's like when you hydroplane in a car on a rainy day on the highway, you just have that moment of like, oh crap, what is about to happen next? But far more often than not, you get back on the road and then you're well on your way and you're able to get home. And that's kind of how it feels Oregon has done for themselves with
Right.
regards to this hire of Dan Lanning as their head coach. I think from a recruiting standpoint, it's going to be fascinating because Mario Cristobal's hallmark while he was here was recruiting, and he is a very good recruiter. I expect him to be able to go to Miami and continue to bring in top recruiting classes because that's what he has been good at in his entire career. He was named the top recruiter in the country at Alabama. I think it was like 2017, maybe. And so he's built this recruiting base at Oregon and brought in these record classes at the school, like higher ranked and rated than any class previously in the history of the program. That's the sort of
Mhm.
recruiter that Cristobal is. I'll be interested to see if Dan Lanning can get to that level because he is also known as an elite recruiter. And Georgia every year, they also have Kirby Smart, but Georgia fans will tell you that one of the reasons that they have highly rated recruiting classes every year and these big time players has been Dan Lanning. He's been sort
Right.
of, the unsung hero behind the scenes for people from afar, but everybody who's in the know has an understanding of, Dan Lanning is a big part of it. Kirby Smart is still a great recruiter. There's no,
Yeah.
I'm not saying, Georgia's recruiting is going to fall off the map now that Dan
Right.
Lanning is
Right.
gone. That's not it at all. It's just that Oregon fans should feel optimistic about his potential to bring in highly rated classes and bring in big time recruits,
Yeah.
the type that we were seeing under Coach Cristobal that we just hadn't seen before. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau was the number one player in the country in his class. Totally
Right.
lived up to the hype. Going to be a
Yeah.
top 2 or 3 pick in the NFL draft. Hutchinson might go 1. That's a different conversation. But Oregon fans, even when, Oregon was sort of rising to a level of national prominence that it had never seen before when Chip Kelly was the
Kelly
head
was there.
coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that those recruiting classes had some guys, but they never cracked the top 10. They weren't into the top 5. They
Yeah.
were usually in like the top 15 range, but usually you could count on Chip to get a top 20 class while he was there. But that was never the hallmark. And the top guys in those classes were usually skill players. They were athletes like DeAnthony Thomas.
Yeah.
He was, I think, the first 5-star that Chip brought in, and Lashe
Right.
Seastrunk was another that went in a whole nother unfortunate direction. But
Yeah.
there weren't a lot of big time recruits like that, and so now Oregon fans have gotten a taste for what it's like to have guys on the field who, if the scheme is not perfect, are just able to be that good and make those sorts of plays. I think Noah Sewell is that kind of guy.
Mhm.
Kayvon Thibodeau is that kind of guy. There have just been these guys who are so good and they're physically dominant that whatever scheme or concept you call, they're just going to be there making plays. I mean, Noah Sewell as a freshman was the best player on the field other than Thibodeau every time the Oregon defense went out there. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's the sort of guy that, before in the Chip years, and the subsequent years with Helfrich and Mariota, there just weren't that many of those sorts of players. DeForest
Yeah.
Buckner was there, and he was really good, but that was after Chip left. And I think that it's just it's a different way to look at Oregon football because, back with Chip, it was all about the scheme and it was brand new and we were scoring in 2 minutes or less and running a bunch of plays and going out of the shotgun every time. And that's what it was all about. And Chip recruited guys that were there to fit his scheme. I mean, Marcus Mariota was, I think, a 2-star recruit out of Hawaii, and he won the Heisman Trophy because he fit that system so perfectly and it elevated him to a new level. When you bring in these sorts of guys who are, 4 and 5-star recruits on the offensive, defensive line and linebacking level, they're just able to go out there and make plays. And I think that Dan Lanning, based on, the fact that he's got roots in the South where most of the good football players across the country come from, there are good ones elsewhere, but there's a reason that there's a reason that the SEC has got such a foothold there on having so many good players. A lot of them come from the South, and Dan Lanning being from there has a lot of advantages with the recruiting aspect.
Right.
I don't know if he'll be able to get to Mario's level because he hasn't been a head coach before. So I don't have anything to look at and say, well, when he was a head coach here, they recruited this, and this. Whereas I can confidently say, Mario will have success recruiting at Miami because he went to Oregon and he had this level of success. Now he's in Miami where he's got a bigger base of players down there in the state of Florida, where a lot of good players come from as well. So I think that he can be a good recruiter. I'll just be interested to see the types of players that he brings in, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and whether in 2 to 3 years, once he gets a couple of classes in there, it starts to look like the Georgia defense that we saw down in Athens this year, which was undoubtedly and statistically the best in the country.
Right. I will say it's fair to say that is probably one of the expectations, that the same way with Lincoln Riley coming into the fold of the Pac-12, that they'll be able to secure some of those players and those recruits that typically probably wouldn't look out west, right? Because they're not usually interested in what those programs have to offer, but like seeing the evolution of where these coaches are coming from may interest some of those recruits. On top of that, I will say that it seems like Dan Lanning has already impressed upon or made a good impression, I'll say, on his current team, whereas one of his athletes already has flipped his decision from the transfer portal, and that's Seven McGee, who was ready to transfer and then talked with Dan and Don Johnson and decided to stick it out and stay with Oregon. So I think right there it's speaking a lot of how these players are already trying to buy in to what he's telling them. And that's probably the biggest thing when you're a coach coming into a new system, getting players to believe that, what I'm telling you is worth giving a try and, sticking out with me.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. And it's been a really good few days here in the early going for Dan Lanning, and Oregon fans should feel good about that. Now, the hindsight, or the bigger picture, I should say, is, we haven't won a game yet. Dan Lanning hasn't coached anything yet.
Right.
But I made this analogy on my show the other day. In a golf tournament, there's an expression that, it's a 4-day golf tournament, which is typical for major championships and everything on the tour. You can't win the tournament on the first day, but you can lose it on the first day. And I think that sort of applies to, the first few weeks of being a new head coach at a school. And I think Dan Lanning has done a lot more than just not lose the tournament here on the Thursday, because he comes in. I was impressed with him at the press conference, and maybe I'm biased because I'm a broadcaster, but I mean, I care how coaches sound at the podium because it speaks to their preparation, how they carry themselves, and especially in college when recruiting is literally half the battle, maybe even more than half the battle. I would say it's a really important thing, and I think he has showed himself very well. He's presented himself very well, and then he's already landed a couple of recruits. You mentioned Seven McGee, who said, I'm going in the transfer portal, and Oregon fans everywhere said, dang, man, that guy showed so much promise, particularly against UCLA, the Pac-12 championship game, in the game against Oregon State. I mean, there were a lot of good things there, and it looked like he was going to be one of those guys who eventually would get a lot of touches, make a lot of explosive plays. But then he entered the transfer portal, and we thought, oh, darn. But then he comes back, and to me that says, so Coach Lanning right there is proving that as a head coach, he knows how to sell players.
Yep.
Because he just sold Seven McGee on, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this because here's what we're going to do here. That's an encouraging sign to me.
Within a matter of 2 hours too,
Yeah,
right?
it was literally within a couple of hours. McGee was in the portal, and then a couple hours later, he was out of it. Rob Mosley, who's a reporter that covers the Ducks and has done so for years, does a magnificent job. He had a tweet that I came across, and it was from 2 hours before when I was reading it, and it was Seven McGee had entered the transfer portal, and I was like, "Oh, no, he didn't."
Right.
Like he's out of there. But
Yeah.
then there's another name that diehard Oregon fans will know, and that guy is Bennett Williams, who is a defensive back, really good playmaker. Missed a lot of this season with an injury, which was unfortunate because he was starting to against Ohio State, Cal. I think he played up until Arizona as well before he got hurt. He was a playmaker in the secondary, and he's a safety or a nickel corner. And it's one of those guys that you don't think a lot of, but then when you think back to the game you just watched, like, wow, Bennett Williams is making like a lot of plays all over the place.
Yeah.
He was thinking about going into the NFL draft, and he actually had a tweet from a year ago where he said, was just declaring a promise online, like, mark it down, Bennett Williams 2022 NFL draft. He then quoted that tweet, put an asterisk, and said 2023 because he's coming back. So that's
Right.
two guys within the program who Dan Lanning has been able to sell on his vision for the University of Oregon, one on the offensive side of the ball, one on the defensive side of the ball. And he's brought them back in a time span of about 48 hours. And Bennett Williams, that is, hadn't officially committed to the NFL draft, but he was thinking about it. And then he decided to come back once Oregon hired Dan Lanning. So I think that right off the bat is, combined with the press conference, I don't know how much better of a start you can really ask for if you're an Oregon fan as the Dan Lanning era begins. And all this time, he's prepping for the Peach Bowl against Michigan or the Orange Bowl. Sorry, wrong fruit.
Oh, okay. Wait. I'm gonna stop you right there because I did not know that. So we're gonna finish that thought in the next coming up next. I do want to discuss that some more, and then a little bit about some of those coaches who were candidates and did not get the hire or chose to go in a different route. So a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
But let's talk for a minute about kicking things up a notch for the big game, the grand stage, the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 56 at SoFi is less than 100 days away, and On Location, the official hospitality partner of the NFL, is the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket, an experience package to the big game. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with college stars turned NFL legends Troy Aikman, Marcus Allen, Tim Brown, and more. Plus accommodations at 5-star LA hotels and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit On Location, exp.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. That's On Location, exp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location. Now, this holiday season, do not stress yourself out and go binge eating with the desserts, okay? Put the desserts away and go ahead and grab the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. It's amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. And I am talking about Built Bar. It's filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate. You really can't get any better than this. It's the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There's so many flavors to choose from. You'll have a hard time choosing, I promise you. Raspberry or mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream or peanut butter brownie, like so many to choose from. You want to cozy up with something warm? Here's a holiday secret. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. Let it melt a little and give your beverage a bit of that Built Bar flavor. Plus, you'll have a nice melty Built Bar to go with it. Be sure to have a couple napkins on hand, though, because it might get a little messy. And then if you're into like marshmallows, go ahead and try the Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. Different flavors, all covered in chocolate. It tastes so good, you won't believe that they're filled with protein. Go ahead and go to built.com and check out all these different flavors available to you this holiday season. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's built.com, 15% off your order using the promo code LOCKED15. Okay, we're wrapping things up here with Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On Ducks. Make sure you guys check out Locked On Ducks on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. He'll be keeping you guys up to date on everything Oregon Ducks this season. So, Spencer, right before we went on a little break, you mentioned that he's going to be getting ready to coach the Peach Bowl. Now, see, I wasn't sure if he was actually going to be coaching that. So he will be stepping in and being involved there?
Yeah, so he's going to stay as the defensive coordinator for the Orange Bowl. I can't give you flack
because Orange Bowl. Sorry,
I messed up the fruits earlier.
Right.
Yeah,
You're
no,
right.
I look forward to the day when we've got a Kiwi Bowl because I mean, right now all the fruits are kind of the same. You can fit them in your hand easily. Anyway, so, but yeah, so he's going to stay as the defensive coordinator for that game, and should they make the national championship, he's going to be the DC for that game as well, which definitely matters with regards to Oregon getting recruits. But as I said, he's already gotten a couple players to stick around. There have also been a couple of 4-star recruits who have said they're going to stay committed to the University of Oregon when National Signing Day happens. As we're recording this on a Tuesday anyway, we'll see if that continues to be the case. But I personally am okay with that, that he's going to stay in that game. If it were a regular bowl game, even a New Year's Six, he probably doesn't go. Maybe he does, but I still wouldn't be upset if he stayed anyway. But because it's college football playoff, I, as an Oregon fan, and I think other Oregon fans should share this opinion as well, I'm happy that he's getting to do that because that's where I want the Oregon program to be able to go. I want to get back to the college football playoff. So he's a young guy. He's 35 years old. I want him to have as much experience in that realm as possible. The pressure of preparing for that sort of game. Getting ready for a team and knowing they're getting ready for you over the course of several weeks, making in-game adjustments when a berth to national championship game is on the line. I think that all of that is going to be beneficial for him. And so it is interesting because usually you see coaches like Brian Kelly left before Notre Dame's bowl game. They're not in the playoff. They are in a New Year's Six bowl, though. I think they got Oklahoma State, which should be a great game. The New Year's Six bowls this year, just a little side note, they're fantastic.
Okay.
They're good. Ohio State, Utah, pretty sure it's Oklahoma State, Notre Dame. The college football playoff is going to be fun.
Right.
I mean, really, really great matchups through and through. It should be a really good year to the end of this college football season. But so that's why I'm okay. And in fact, I'm happy that Lanning is not going to, leave Georgia until their season concludes, because I want him to be able to get those reps. And I mean, the fact that he's already gotten 2 guys to be able to stay at Oregon,
it says a lot.
It says a lot that he's not even, he basically has 2 jobs right now. He's becoming the head coach at Oregon. He has to put together his staff, move his family up to Eugene, and he's got to get ready for the Orange Bowl. So, I mean, there's a lot going on.
It's a lot going on.
And I think he's off to a fantastic start. And, for the sake of my mental sanity and that of Oregon fans, I hope that continues into the future.
I will say it is very impressive of him to stick out, his commitment and stay to, still work there throughout the rest of the season, finish it out strong. On top of, all of this chaos of who Oregon chose as their head coach, there were a lot of candidates that we heard about being a possibility of, taking that role. Chip Kelly was one of them. And that was one I know a lot of Oregon fans are probably kind of excited about if it was a possibility. Some might have been against it because it was like, you left, you should stay gone. But I think the most surprising news that I've heard so far was Justin Wilcox offered the position and turned it down. And I think we could talk about all the candidates that were, considered and everything, go on all night about that. But I really want to talk about that because I don't think there's any distinct reason if we will know for sure why he chose this, but I'd love to get your opinion about what, him turning that role down. He's coaching a Cal team that has honestly been very stagnant. They haven't seen any major growth. He's kind of just keeping it, there. This season wasn't the greatest for them. only team to lose to Arizona. That says a lot right there. Yet he still was offered this high position and turned it down.
Yeah. I haven't read anything as to a specific reason that he has said himself.
Right.
And frankly, I'll start on Oregon's side. I know why they offered him the job, and I don't think that Oregon fans should feel any less excited about Dan Lanning just because they offered it to Wilcox first. The reason that Wilcox's name was going around is because he is from Oregon. He went to Junction City High School. He played at the University of Oregon. His dad played at the University of Oregon. He is an Oregon guy. And so after Willie Taggart left after 1 year, Cristobal left after 4 seasons when they were hoping he'd be there for longer. I think there were a lot of people in the Oregon administration and the fan base, alumni as well, who wanted someone that was going to be able to commit for the long term. And I understand that. And Wilcox, would have been that guy had he accepted. I mean, the only reason that he would have left Oregon is if he, had not been performing up to the standards that Oregon football has set, and they would have fired him because he wasn't winning enough games. I'm not saying that would have been the case. I think he's an enigma as a coach down at Cal because that is a really difficult place to win. But that was, one of the biggest appeals of Justin Wilcox is Oregon is his end job, right? Oregon to Justin Wilcox is what Miami is to Mario Cristobal.
To Mario Cristobal, that makes sense.
Where he's from, it's where he played. It's, the place where theoretically he's always wanted to end up. And so when I read that piece from John Canzano of the Oregonian that Wilcox was offered the job and turned it down, I'm still kind of confused because I don't know why as a football coach you'd want to be at Cal. Like, you can't tell me that there is as much buy-in from the administration and the fans at Cal into their football program as there is at the University of Oregon. I don't think you can make that argument.
I think it's fair to say, and again, we don't have any official word from
Right.
Justin Wilcox himself, but I think it's fair to say that's a lot of pressure, and coming from him, someone who's from the area, it's even more pressure because it's a pressure to succeed, the pressure to live up to expectations that he may put on himself, that the fans will put on him, that his loved ones will put on him. You know what I mean? It's a lot. So maybe he feels like he's not in the right space right now to move forward with that. Maybe he doesn't want to be responsible for revamping a team that might need some tweaking, after the season that they had. They didn't have a bad season, but there were some up and down games that made me really look like they won the game, but did they really win it? You know what I mean? Like, it was like by the skin of their teeth.
So after the Ohio State game this year, I was as fired up as anyone. The place where I was living at the time, I'm amazed I didn't get a noise complaint. I was going absolutely nuts.
It happens. It's football season.
Yeah, exactly. It's football season. If you know, okay. So anyway, on from that. But then when I watched them lose to Stanford and then almost lose to Cal and Arizona played them tied at home, that was when I was like, all right, there's a ceiling here, and I don't think this team is getting to college football playoff. They almost did. I wanted them to get there, but there were 2 games against Utah away from doing that, but they weren't particularly close in those games. But I think you made a great point about the pressure, because that to me is the most logical decision from Justin Wilcox's perspective. Is, man, it is, do I feel ready for that? Do I feel like this is my time? Because maybe, in 15 years, who's to say Dan Lanning is going to be the head coach of the University of Oregon? Maybe he will be. I would love for him to be, because if he were, that means he's succeeding at a high level and he's, still at the school winning a bunch of games, and that he's, truly grown to love it there. But maybe Wilcox thinks that he wants to grow himself as a coach before he tries to get that job, because
that's fair.
And again, we don't know that is purely speculation on our part, but when you said that, I completely agreed. And it's the only thing I could think of, because, he's a guy who played there. He's a guy who is now coaching football, and that job was offered and he said no. Maybe he didn't want the pressure of it. Maybe he wants to grow as a head coach, or maybe he's just really grown to love,
Cal.
Maybe it's just really grown to love Cal. And I think if you're a Berkeley fan, you should feel really good about that. That Wilcox, who a lot of people see as, a capable head coach, wanted to stay at Cal, and it's a hard place to win. They had a good finish to the season. I think they got up to 5 wins after starting like 1-6.
Yeah.
Cal did. So we'll see
Started to
if
turn some things around, but they had some struggles for sure.
yeah, they had a lot of struggles, and like I said, that's the only reason I can think of is the pressure thing. Is like the pressure to win at Cal is not the same as it is at Oregon. If you go 5 and Mark Helfrich had 1 losing season, Oregon fired him and said, "We're going on to the next guy."
Right.
And Justin Wilcox went 5-7 this year, and I think Cal fans are kind of happy to have him back. Would be my guess. I don't think that's a terrible thing. He's not a bad coach. I just don't know if he's a high level coach at this point. And so we'll see if he grows into that. But I was definitely surprised that he was offered. I assumed when it wasn't Wilcox in the end that we decided to go with Lanning, not that we offered Wilcox. He said no, and then we went to Dan Lanning.
Yeah. All right. Well, Spencer, that is a wrap on your first episode of Locked On Pac-12 podcast.
Hopefully not the last.
Definitely not the last. You will be a weekly regular now. Love to have you in the mix. We're going to be talking everything Oregon Ducks with Spencer, y'all. We have a Locked On Ducks podcast now. So make sure you guys check out Locked On Ducks on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. And then follow along on Twitter at Locked On Ducks. You can follow Spencer McLaughlin himself on Twitter at Smalls_55. And then you can follow Locked On Pac-12 podcast at LO_Pac-12 and me at _Cindy Robinson. Thank you all for making Locked On Pac-12 podcast your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets. It's hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. So make sure you guys check it out. Other than that, stay locked on Pac-12 on the Locked On Network.
Yes, indeed.